I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
All right. Well, it's just me and David and Forrest today. Forrest, I know you had some stuff happen, so this is going to be about you today.
Uh-oh.
Wrong with it, honey.
Yeah, what happened? I know we've had to postpone quite a few times actually because of the holidays and stuff, but
yeah, I don't remember what I told you and what I hadn't told you. Well, I guess it's been about a month and a half ago now, since I think I told you, Will, but we hadn't discussed it really.
Yeah,
I came home from work, and of course I always have a meet and greet at the gate when I come home. All the kiddies are sitting up there at the gate. They hear the truck coming a quarter of a mile away, and they're all sitting at the gate. Mom's home, So I have to get out, shoo them back so I can at least get the truck pulled in and then shut the gate behind me. And so I did this, and I went to go get back in the truck, and I had just closed the door, and the light had gone off in the truck. And I just happened to look down towards the barn, and I saw a figure down there standing. And of course, I've got that big pole light down there, and it's quite bright. And I saw this figure, and I thought at first it's a human, and it was completely sideways to me. And when I noticed, I looked again, and it was like, it made kind of how I would call it a 3/4 turn, but the turn wasn't made with the feet. The feet still were facing forward, but it was from the waist, and turned around and looked at me, and it was all black, completely black. The face was black, and of course somebody could say had a ski mask on or something like that, but that wasn't the case. It wasn't cold enough for a ski mask at that point in time, so it'd have been kind of ridiculous, I think, especially down there by the barn. I mean, why would you need a ski mask down at the barn? You got to sneak up on the horses or something? But anyway, and then I just sat there in the truck, and I went ahead and pulled forward and a little bit, and I kept looking down there, and it just strolled right on across over to the back of the barn. And I actually drove down there after I shooed all the first thing I did was get all the cats in the cat house. And then I went back and got in the truck and locked all the doors and drove around the barn, and I didn't see anybody. Nobody. Nothing. And, of course, they can't get into the barn anymore because, after that glorified mess that they made down there, with opening the bags and throwing feed and everything else all over the barn, I've got it chained. All the doors are chained shut. And so there's no way that, anything of any size could get in. Well, they'd have to break the chains on the door. And I guess if they were smart enough, they probably could. But anyway, I drove around the barn completely and didn't see a soul. Well, the next morning when I went down there at 7:30 to feed, it had rained overnight. And I think I told you this, Will. And of course, dummy me, I went down there and I did not take my I didn't take my phone, so I had no camera with me. Didn't even think about it. But there were tracks around the outside of the paddocks out there. And they weren't big tracks. In fact, they weren't much larger than mine, because I actually put my foot next to one of them, and it wasn't much bigger than my foot. So, and the figure actually appeared to me to be not much taller than myself. So I don't think it obviously wasn't an adult, I don't think. But now you're going to say, oh, well, it could have been a human or something like that. Well, first off, I don't know why they've been walking around out there. As many grass burrs as we have out here, humans don't walk around here. My son can tell you that. He even remembers what he did when he was 4 years old. So, ran across my grandmother's, at that point in time, it was my grandmother's, property, and he went running out there barefoot and loaded himself up full of grass burrs and, came screaming back to me. So, and he still remembers that, and he's 40 now. So anyway, you're not going to be walking around barefoot. A human's not going to be walking around barefoot out here. So, not unless they like pain. So anyway, but I'll tell you what I did was that I had a friend go down there at the same time of night, and I had him turn around, and he was dressed in dark clothing. And he turned around and looked at me. In fact, he turned around full, I didn't tell him how to turn around. Do a 3/4 turn and only turn at the waist, I didn't tell him to do that. I just told him to turn around. And I could clearly, with the light and everything, see his hands and his face. So there was no change in the color of this, critter. But it wasn't real big. I'm not going to say it was buff or anything like that. It wasn't like that. It was, actually I would call a slender build.
Quick question, sweetie. Whenever did it give you the impression that it was kind of trying to sneak around or anything like that, or it just didn't see you?
No, I think it did see me because it did the 3/4 turn. And I think why it did, I noticed it that was what caused me to notice it. I had gotten into the back end of the truck and I slammed the door.
Oh,
and I
okay.
think that is what caught its attention. But it was kind of weird because, I had the light. I didn't drive in with my lights off. I had my lights on. So all my lights, when I've got my lights on, they reach all the way down to the end of the driveway, which is probably about 150 yards. And,
right.
But the barn is another 100 plus yards from the house. So, and then I've got that pole light back there. And so it didn't act like it was very concerned at all about my whereabouts, but I think the reason that it actually turned and looked was because of the noise that I made, which was slamming the door.
Gotcha.
So, I thought, well, that's weird.
Yeah, a little bit.
But, all it did was walk around. You could see the footprints as it went around the back of the paddocks back there on the back side of the barn. And so I don't know what it was looking for or what, because, of course it could have climbed over the paddocks and I guess got into the barn that way, if it could manage reaching through the bars and opening the doors of the stalls, but none of the stall doors were open because obviously they're not going to close the stall doors back behind them, thinking about or worrying about whether the horses would get out.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it was looking for, hoping that I'd left something out, I guess. I don't know.
Have they ever been seen down there that much, or is it kind of a rare thing to see them down that way?
Well, now, see, the cabin is down there, and see, it had to have come around from the one side of the cabin. And see, the cabin is where I had my lovely encounter with the can of beans and the well, the first time with the figure at the window,
Yeah.
when I was woke up in the wee hours of the morning, wondering what in the world my cats were snarling at the window. So, yeah. So the cabin is right there. And it actually had come around from the side of the cabin and was walking across over to the barn.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So I think that they make a habit of coming in down there. And I think I may have told you this, Will, too. I had noticed that the neighbor back there, and this was something that he had done last year, but he's now since added more. lights out there that he keeps on all the time.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Spotlights.
Huh.
So,
Wonder what he would say about why he did that.
Well,
ask him if he's had any prowlers around.
Well, Will, this is the person that I told you about when we were talking. I sent you that email about all the cops and the ambulances showing up over there.
Oh.
It was his house, and come to find out, he was letting his kids drive cars around. In fact, I had just a few days after this happened, I actually thought, well, maybe he's out there driving his truck around the perimeter of his property looking for somebody or something that he's seen. Come to find out, it was actually his son, supposedly, because this is what my other neighbor told me, because I texted her and I asked her if she knew what was going on, because the kid would stop and park the truck, flip the lights on bright, and the bright lights would come literally up the fence line and hit into my bedroom window. And I thought, well, that's rather peculiar. So she said, oh no, he lets his son practice driving. Well, that particular night I noticed that the other kids had the ATV out there following him in that. Well, I guess what was it, 2 days later, all this, happened. Oh, it was on New Year's Day, wasn't it? It was New Year's Day that happened. And they were out there on the ATV, and evidently they'd invited some other kids over, and they were speeding around on it, and they flipped the thing. So all these kids got hurt. So that was what was going on. But I won't say since this is being recorded, what I told you about what he has been accused of doing. So that was what I thought, well, he wouldn't want to be lighting this place up knowing what I know about that, I don't think, unless somebody had been sneaking around out there. So I don't know. I just don't know. But I think something, because I have noticed several of the ranches and stuff out here of all of a sudden installing a lot of spotlights around their property. Yeah. So, anywho, but we got a lot of deer around here, so it would be a real good haven for them. And I had a deer killed on the property here just recently, and I don't know what killed it, because my dog just brought up a skull yesterday when I was feeding. So
I was just about to ask you if you've noticed anything different with the deer going on lately.
Well, no, they come on my property a lot, especially during deer season, because they know I don't allow hunting out here. But the guy behind me also is a renowned poacher, so he hunts all year long. So it's not unusual for me to find deer parts and my dog to bring them up. But she did come up with a skull yesterday, and so obviously one met their demise somewhere out here.
How close is that cabin to the woodline, Forrest?
Well, it depends on which woodline you're talking about. A woodline that's on his property. My property is cleared all around it, but I had big trees that were right there beside it, and in fact, that was the tree. I think, remember I told you, Will, that the two big limbs on it had just come down, and it was a perfectly healthy tree. In fact, I even had an arborist out here trying to figure out why the limbs came down.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, they were big limbs on the tree, and he couldn't find anything rotten about it or anything else. So, because I thought maybe I needed to have the whole tree taken down. He said, no, there's nothing wrong with the tree. He said, this is a perfectly healthy tree. We hadn't had high winds or anything like that. Nobody could understand that. So, that's kind of like those, well, I sent you the picture of the covering that I had over my well that ended up over, about 50, 60 feet away from the well?
Right.
Did you ever find out anything else about the tub, sweetie, that was moved or flipped over?
No, no, the tubs were moved. That cover over the well was taken, intact, completely taken intact and moved, because, it was so weird. It was sitting on top of those motorcycles that belonged to Jessica's father that she came over here and dumped on my property. We won't go into that, but that was rather an aggravation for me, but they're still out here. Do y'all need some motorcycles? Y'all can. Holy moly, what happened out here? Hold on, guys. Hold on. We may have to stop here just a second. I don't know if y'all heard that crash.
No.
Okay, I don't know who did that, but I'll have to go outside and fix that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
My recycling was all stacked out here neatly, and it's bagged up and stacked. And something got into it, I guess.
One of the cats.
I don't know what. Well, no, they don't get into it. It's all the empty cans, and I always wash the cans out, so they have no reason to. I've never had them get into the stuff. The whole bags are just knocked over. So, anyway, but no, that I sent you that picture, didn't I, Will? That was.
Of which one now?
It was the framework, and it was scaffolding that I had taken in. And then we had put a tarp over the top of it to protect my new well and everything. And I've been trying to find somebody to come out here and put a building around it. And of course, you can't find anybody who wants to work anymore. And so unless you're going to build a new house, they don't want to build a house for your well. But anyway, the scaffolding with the tarp, it was in a rectangular shape, and the scaffolding supports and everything were still intact, and the tarp was intact on the scaffolding, and it was turned upside down, and it was sitting over on top of those motorcycles.
Now, wasn't that done the same night that you found the pile of brush messed up or something?
Well, no, the piles of brush were fine. It was there was three, I saved my old, galvanized water tanks because I use them to put, plant vegetables and stuff in them because cutworms can't crawl up them. And so I had saved some, water tanks that had developed holes, and we couldn't, we patched them until they couldn't be patched anymore. And I had set them over there by the well house. And they were neatly stacked there, and they were all over the place. And one had been dragged and was literally up against over here by the gate, going into the yard. And it had been drugged. It was a big one. It was like a 6-foot long water tank, and it was about 2.5 feet deep. And it had been dragged all the way over to the gate. And then the other two were, one was kind of down by where the tarp and the scaffolding had gone to, down by those motorcycles. And then another one was just sitting in the middle of the driveway. I drove in. It was like, what the heck happened here? And that night I actually called the sheriff, and I had 2 sheriffs come out, 2 of them. And they both were walking around, and there was one great big tall guy, and then there was a shorter guy, and the great big tall one kept saying, "Oh, it must have been a dust devil." And the other guy and I were like looking at each other. A dust devil at 10 o'clock at night? I said, but look at the stacks of brush over here that we're going to burn that was not more than 20 feet from the well. Now, if a dust devil had come through, those neatly made stacks of brush that we were burning or would be getting ready to burn would not have been neatly stacked. And they weren't touched. And I said, how did this happen? And the other guy's he kept going, no, I don't think that was, and we haven't had any wind tonight, because that was the first thing I called when I asked the dispatcher. I said, do we have a storm come through that I didn't know about while I was at work? And she went, no. Why? And then I started explaining it to her, and she says, maybe I better send somebody out there. I was like, okay. So that's when they showed up. And I mean, they walked around and they were like, okay, well, how did this, and you could see where the tank had actually been drug. I said, this was drug. I said, look at the marks. I said, it was drug. And he's like, well, who would do that? And I'm like, look at him like, that's the reason you're here. Who would do this? I don't know.
Well, and it had dirt. It had dirt in it too, so it would have been even heavier than just an empty bag.
Yeah. So I'm just like, what the heck are you? Are you trying to tell me that some kids came out here and did this? No, kids wouldn't be that ambitious
or strong.
So no.
And picking your place to do it. I mean, that's just kind of craziness.
Well, yeah. Let's just go over here. And by the way, we're going to have to lift this thing up and throw it upside down onto those motorcycles over there. And I mean, it took 3 of us to get that thing down. And then we thought, oh, well, we can just carry it back over there and lift it up, because now see, it has to be lifted up. It would have had to have been lifted up and put on top of the pump, because the pump itself is in a casing that's about 4.5 feet tall. Yeah. And I don't know how you know what I'm talking about. It's big around, in a big blue casing. And so it would have had to have been lifted up and then carried, all this way, and then dumped on top of those motorcycles upside down. And I'm like, we had to take the whole thing apart and redo it and take it apart and put it back together again around the well.
Yeah, you would have had to use a tractor to move that thing around. Yeah.
No, yeah, you could. There was no way. It probably weighed 300 or 400 pounds altogether with that scaffolding in there.
Yeah.
That's what we used for framework to hold the tarp and everything up there. So.
And then the dirt, that's probably another 200 pounds with just the dirt.
Yeah. But I mean, even at that, I'm like, pounds. Yeah, I didn't understand why in the world even a Bigfoot would be doing such as that. But I mean, we've heard of them doing such stupid things sometimes. So, I thought mischief. That's all it was.
Well, and especially if it's younger ones, they're going to do things the adults wouldn't do.
That's true.
Oh yeah.
I think that I still think they were upset about you getting all that brush cleared out too when they did that.
Well, and you know what? This was right after we had cleared all that out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, there you go.
So that very well have been the case. We might have removed the hiding places.
Where that stuff got piled up, does that obscure your view from the house out there?
No, it's off to the side. It doesn't block any view at all for me.
I wondered if maybe they were moving stuff so to have more cover since you cut back the other stuff.
No, the way they threw that cover on the well ended up, it was upside down with all the scaffolding pointed skyward. So, it just didn't make any sense at all. And I mean, for somebody to throw that up there, and it had to have been thrown. It couldn't have been, I don't think anybody, well, it'd have to have been a very, very tall person on one end, because it was high on one end and lower on another to have been able to do what they did. And, I'll have to look again for the picture. I'll send both of you guys, I'll send you the picture again, Will. I still have it here somewhere.
How big around did you say those limbs were that were broken out of the tree?
Oh, they were probably a good 1.5 feet around. I mean, they were big limbs.
And if they couldn't find anything wrong with the tree, that sounds to me like they may have been pissed off about something with that and ripping limbs off the tree.
Well, part of that came down on. Yeah, part of that came down on the cabin, and I was actually afraid it didn't damage the cabin, but I was afraid that it might have gone through the roof or something, but it didn't. So, but yeah, when that arborist came out here and looked at it, he was just like, well, he said that was a perfectly healthy tree. He said, I don't understand why it was why it did that. He said we hadn't had any high winds or storms or anything that would have caused that.
Yeah, that's weird.
So, I don't know, unless their kids were playing on it and they just, had one too many of them up there and they, I don't know. Mama Bigfoot needs to, do a little discipline of her children.
Take a switch to them.
I think it's going to take more than a switch.
Them out there on purpose.
Get right.
Huh?
They might have sent them out there on purpose to do that.
Oh, yeah. Let's go aggravate that old lady.
cut back our brush.
Yeah, clearing out that property. What the hell she thinks she is? Oh, Lord.
That's crazy.
Oh, and I what I was thinking the other day is we got a deal in the mail, one of our little local circulars saying that we have black bears showing up in this area again. And I had to laugh after, you remember those pictures that I put out on Facebook just to see what people would say, when I took those pictures of those footprints that we had right outside my gate out here. And a lady kept trying to tell me that they were black bear. They were black bear.
Of course they were.
Oh, yeah. Well, first off, they don't look anything like a bear print. But, yeah, you keep telling yourself that.
Right.
Come on, you can come sit out here with your lawn chair and watch and see if you see a black bear come through here.
Deny.
But, evidently they have been seeing black bear in this area, but that was no black bear paw print. I've seen way too many black bears and grizzlies, and I've never seen a bear print yet that didn't show the claws on them, too.
Yeah, exactly. Have you seen anything else weird in the driveway, sweetie, as far as like rocks or things being lined up or drag marks or patterns or anything?
No, but I can't remember if I told you, this happened about 3 months ago. I was sitting in here in the bedroom and all of a sudden I heard a thud against the back wall back here on the bedroom. And, I went to the back door and I looked out and it's real funny. Those alarms that you sent me, Dave? I put them, they're still on the door, but you know what? I hadn't had it go off again ever since that time I told you that it sounded like an elephant fell off the back porch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I just looked out the back door and I didn't go out, and I thought, okay, well, maybe something fell off one of the trees out here. I'll look tomorrow morning when I get up to go feed the horses, and I did, and there was actually a big rock out there, and it was orange-colored. It had clay all over it. It was a rock, but it had clay all over it, and red clay. And where they had cut that service road through behind my fence, which is about maybe 40, 50 feet away, the rocks out there that they turned up look like that. So that had come from back there all the way over here. So somebody or something had thrown it and it hit the house. So.
Did you by chance pick it up and see if it was warm, like something had been holding it?
Oh, no, this was the next morning. The next morning. Okay. I wasn't going to go out there. No, when I heard it, I looked down the side of the house and I didn't see anything at the time, and it was actually laying up against the house, and I didn't see it until the next morning, and it was just literally laying at the foot of the house. there.
Okay.
So, and it was the only rock there. So I was like, oh, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, but, no, I hadn't had anything other than, I can't remember anything else exciting that's happened around here. But I haven't seen any.
Go ahead, sweetie.
No, I just said I haven't seen any figures around here either, and I just assume not.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. I'd love to know why your neighbors got all those spotlights up all of a sudden, though.
Well, I honestly think, like I said, all up and down the road, we started seeing them appear at various different times that people were putting them up. And I mean, houses that had never had them on them before, all of a sudden were putting spotlights up and motion lights up on the outside of them. And this guy that bought this $1 million piece of property across the way from me, he had one out there to begin with. Now he has multiple. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So I don't think I'm the only one that's having visitors.
Well,
now,
no,
to play devil's advocate,
sense.
I could say that maybe people are doing that because of all the illegal aliens coming through, and they're keeping an eye on that. But I could also go with the other.
Well, we do have that problem. Yeah.
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 Well, I wish they'd take care of the illegal alien problem, but yeah. Oh, I guess that I probably shouldn't say that, huh?
I'll go ahead and say it for everybody. My boy Trump will take care of it.
Okay. Yeah, Trump's going to take care of that. I've noticed they've been buying a lot of TVs and a lot of clothes and stuff, so I guess they're packing their bags, getting ready to head south.
Hope so.
Well, I guess the Sasquatch, they wouldn't be illegal. They've been there the whole time, so. Well,
yeah, they're not illegal. They're all part of nature. So that's not the case. So they've been here a lot longer than the rest of us have.
Did you see Forrest? I guess I can't remember. I should have looked up the article. I didn't think about it before we come on, but they apparently discovered yet another species of Homo. I think that's 7 or 8 now.
Do they give them a name? I noticed that. I know that there has for a long time been a DNA that kept cropping up, and it was actually appearing in other different Homo species, and so it was called the invisible Homo. They knew that there was another one out there, but they just hadn't yet been able to identify it. So I'm not saying that that's what they've come up with. But God, I haven't seen where there has been one recently. But
this one,
do you remember what they called it?
Yeah, I just looked it up. It says in 2024, scientists discovered a possible new human species called Homo, and I'm going to spell this. It's Julensis. This is based on fossils. This is based on fossils found in Eastern Asia, date back 300 to 50,000 years ago.
Huh. No, I had not heard about that.
So the name Homo, and it's Julensis, I guess, means big head.
Big head.
It says the species likely hunted wild horses, made stone tools, and processed animal hides.
Sounds like one of my former bosses.
What's that, David?
It sounds like one of my former bosses. Big head, described everything.
I wonder why they would have called them big heads.
Well, that's a good question.
That's unusual.
And where did they find this at again?
In, hold on just
Asia?
a sec. Yeah, Eastern Asia.
Is it East Asia or actually on the Asian?
East Asia.
East Asia, okay.
I didn't even know we had horse herds out there.
Well,
in Mongolia, I would, I could see that, and the steppes of Russia, but,
right.
Well,
they may have been more widespread than we know, too.
Yeah, and a lot of people think they came from that area and crossed the land bridge, so I could see that.
Yeah, I had a professor my first couple of years of college. She was a friend. She was actually ran the geology department, but her early training was, or study was, the little horses in North America when they were like dog sized.
Yeah.
That was her area
Yeah,
of,
Eohippus.
that was her area of expertise. So it wouldn't surprise me if they crossed, the land bridge when the ice sheets were down.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that camels and horses actually began in the Americas, and then they disappeared.
Yeah,
I'm not totally convinced that they actually all disappeared, but it's kind of like Neanderthals. Well, they were only over here. Well, or this type of man was only over here. Mm-hmm. Let's face it, we're all wandering Jews. So, we just kind of go here, we go there, we go, all over the place. So I don't think that, it's kind of like the Iceman that everybody said looks so much cave-like. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't surprise me if they came up and, found out that he was a Denisovan or Neanderthal or something like that. So I don't think that they limited their wanderings just to the old world. So, but
that was interesting.
You
mentioned camels. When I was stationed at Fort Lewis, we had to go over to Eastern Washington I don't remember what we were doing. It wasn't anything big. I guess we were supposed to go to the field. Then they decided we weren't going to do that. So we went, but the captain that we had, our platoon commander, because we had a major that was in charge of the unit, he decided that he wanted wagon wheels for his house because part of that was the old Klickitat Trail and stuff over there. So I remember we flew around with the guys and a couple helicopters, and the only thing we found, one of the guys found a fossilized camel tooth.
Huh.
And that sucker was big too. We had to actually take it and have it looked at so they could determine what it was. But it was a camel tooth thing. It was about 4 inches long and probably, it was probably an inch thick.
Yeah. Well, have you ever seen horse teeth? They're pretty big.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just thought it was interesting. You found it laying on the ground out in the desert.
I'm not surprised.
Well,
but it was interesting.
I find it very interesting that there's a lot of things out there if people just look.
Yeah, well, we talked about all these different things these archaic human species found, and it seems like they're turning up another one all the time.
Oh, I think there's probably, when you get right down to the nitty gritty, I bet you there turns out to be a dozen or more human species.
Oh,
and the thing is, and I think that they all coexisted at different periods of time, and probably for longer periods of time than we even, we set these time limits on these different species, and I don't think that we can, because first off, we weren't there, we don't know. And we're finding out now that there's pockets of animals that have existed for eons of time in certain areas that we thought were extinct. And so I think it's the same thing with, probably humans and a human species. I mean, we've got Homo floresiensis down in the islands, Indonesia out there, that people that live there still say they exist. So,
yeah.
I mean, I think that the natives probably know a hell of a lot more than us whiteys do. So,
they call it the Ibu-Gogo or something like that?
You mean their Bigfoot out there? Orang Pindak.
They're Orang Pindak on the island of Flores.
Yeah.
Don't they call it the Ibu-Gogo or something like that?
Well, I don't know about that, but the island of Flores has they were kind of nicknamed the Hobbit because they did have rather large feet, but these were actually human species. They were just a pygmoid type of people, and being limited on an island, you're they hunted pygmy elephants and pygmy rhinos. So I mean, you're going to be smaller because the food sources are going to be more limited on an island than they are on a big continent. So your size is it would be preferential that you'd be smaller rather than larger. So that's, they developed a smaller type than one of us. We probably wouldn't be able to exist there like they did.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have the hunting skills unless we developed them. So, but the people there that still live in a lot of these islands, they still say they see them. And I'm trying to remember what the other one. There was another pygmoid species that they just. And the name escapes me right now, but it was another island out there in Indonesia, and they were slightly different than the Homo floresiensis. And so they have actually been named as they were actually named as a new species, and that's been a few years back, but they were also a pygmoid type people, smaller people that lived on an island. So,
it's interesting. I got contacted by a guy named Rex Yapi, who's a native of Indonesia, and he's been looking for, financial support for his field work there. But he was talking about, let's see, I was looking at my text from him, a bunch of these different things. They have the different cryptids there. One is called the, says Umboy. It's Umboi. It's a volcanic island. It's home of the Ropan. Ropan is the indigenous Kavai language, and it means flying pterosaur. And there was some other things like, let me see, he was talking about the thylacines and things like that people say that they routinely see there. Apparently the jungles are so thick and vast, it's very difficult to get in there. And, he's currently working on a reforestation project near his village, but
they say that, I mean, they've got field footage of thylacines even now that people see coming on their property and such. I mean, animals learn after a while if they're going to be hunted by man that they hide.
Away.
Yeah. They stay away from us. I mean, we're the worst predator on the face of the earth.
Oh, that's true.
And so, I mean, it just seems to be, I'm not going to say in our nature, but in the nature of a lot of people, that they just have to, they want to kill. And I don't understand it, but, I don't know why we can't cohabit with animals, but they seem to think that they need to, hunt and destroy. But, I mean, we've got film footage on it, but it's kind of like Patty, God forbid, look at that beautiful film footage that we've got of the Patterson-Gimlin film of Patty strolling across there. Oh, but she's not real. She's a guy in a monkey suit. No, never mind that she's 7.5 feet tall. We've got people that jump into monkey suits. Back in 1967, yeah, no problem. Well, what did you do? Paint stripes on dogs, and make them run funny to take pictures of thylacines, But, yeah, anyway. But the orang pendak, I always, you always hear people say, well, why didn't you get a picture, film footage or whatever? I remember even when I was talking about the one that we saw out here in the middle of the highway, somebody made a comment when we did that show. Well, why didn't you get a picture of it? Well, you know what? That wasn't the first thing on my mind. Was to grab the phone. We need to get a picture. And I just remember that lady that used to, and she probably still is for all I know, was Samoan, I believe it was Samoan tigers, or maybe it was the Indonesian tiger. I forget. I'm sorry. It had to have been in the Indonesian tigers, which are very, very rare, but they do exist. And they had been tagging them, and they were tracking them. And she was walking down a trail and happened to look up. She heard motion or heard noise in the forest there, and happened to look up just in time to see an orang pendak walk across the trail in front of her. And here she was thinking that it was going to be a tiger. Now, she's brave enough to go up there unarmed, tracking tigers, with a 35 millimeter camera hanging around her neck at the time. She didn't take a picture of the orang pendak. she was in so much shock that she had seen the thing that she even said this on TV, that she could not believe that she didn't pick up the frickin' camera and take a picture.
That's why most people don't.
Wasn't expecting that.
Very easy. It's very easy to do. Let me tell you. We did it with a bear. You know, when we'd seen,
you're questioning, am I really seeing this? And by the time you realize you are, and you try to do something else, it's gone.
Yeah, it's a what the heck, and then your brain just kind of freezes, and then by that time it's gone, and you know. But I mean, there are sometimes somebody will be in the frame of mind. Well, you know, we interviewed the guy in Southern Oregon that took the picture of the Bigfoot that he encountered, but it had already started to walk away, so it's partially obscured by trees.
Yeah.
You know, when he was actually face to face with it, he didn't have the presence of mind to pull the camera out of his shirt pocket until the thing was walking away. But that's what happens.
Well, I mean, that's what happens. Yeah. I mean, you know, my granddaughter even made some comment about, well, Mom McKay, why didn't you just take a picture of the while it was there at your window? I'm like, that wasn't the first thing on my mind. Was I wanted it away from my window.
It's like
it's sort of like take a picture of it.
It's sort of like you're concerned about the status of your underwear before the camera.
Right.
I was concerned about the status of my life, realizing that I had only a plate of glass between me and it. Oh my gosh. You know, it's like, gosh. And, you know, and you hear about some of these stories, especially, you know, the ones that Fred tells up there in Alaska. And, you know, and I know that he's probably got people all the time. Well, why didn't they take a picture? Yeah, when you got something like that running at you or beating on your window or making, you know, trying to entice your kids to leave the house. I mean, the first concern is not taking a picture of the damn thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're in a real situation, you know, and that's just it. You know, when people, they put stuff on social media or whatever, I have really big doubts. What would we say, David? It's put our skepticals on. That was a thing from the Western Bigfoot Society years ago, or as Renee called it, the Western BS Society.
Well, I never understood, in all seriousness, how or why people hoax this thing. I mean, you really want to get 15 minutes of fame and you're forgotten.
Well, it's not that. They get so hung up in this topic, and then they feel pressured to produce. Even if they get something good the first time, then they feel pressured to sort of keep that going, and then that leads them to hoax. In fact, there was a guy, there's an old timer that I'm going to be talking to in the near future, a Navajo, who got scammed by Tom Biscardi, you know, and I'm not afraid to say he's one of the worst hoaxers out there, you know, and then of course this gentleman found out too late after he got, I don't know, pictures or some kind of information that he had, but it made him very skeptical to talk to anybody afterwards. But you get people like that just gotta, in fact, Biscardi, I think it was 2005, my brother-in-law were up in the Bluff Creek area. We spent a week up there, and Biscardi and two of his guys were up there, and they were hogging, you know, they were on the radio constantly, and I'm sure it was some local reporter that ended up with egg on his face, and I'll get to that in a second, but they kept saying that a Bigfoot capture was imminent, and they went through all this stuff. Now, you know, that's a real, there aren't that many roads up there. And my brother-in-law and I were covering that area constantly, you know, from sunrise in the morning until after dark in the evening each day. And we never once saw any people or any of their vehicles up there. So that comes around to the point where this one reporter paid Biscardi and his guys to take him to the creature's lair that they were supposedly going to be a capture. And they drove this guy around all day long. And finally, they took him to some house where there were a couple of gals in bikinis, and that was the lair. So the reporter got egg in his face, and I personally think that's where Biscardi and these guys were hanging out the whole time they were concocting this business. But, we were doing real work. Of course, we weren't trying to get any attention for what we were doing. I didn't want anybody to know we were there and working the area. But these people come out and they do these insane things just for attention.
Well, and you don't want people, if you're working an area looking for them, you don't want a bunch of people out there running all over the place because, they're going to be like just any other animal. They're going to depart. They're going to run. They're going to leave. So,
well, it's like there was a sighting up on the Olympic Peninsula, and the BFRO had gotten onto it before I found out about it. I heard it on a radio broadcast. Well, I knew where the area was, and I somehow figured out who the guy was who was the witness. And I called him, and the BFRO told him not to talk to anybody, but I got just enough information out of him to find out where this place was. So we drove there. And this vehicle, I just parked my truck, and here comes this SUV, pulled up right across the road from us. And these 4 or 5 guys jump out with backpacks, and they go literally running as fast as they could up this logging road. And I said, no, I'm not going to bother going up there because they're going to trample any evidence that might be up there, because they're just running hell bent. You go into the field, you got to walk slowly and look around carefully and, really examine your way into a place. And I just,
you have to be scientific about it.
You have to be
scientific. Yes. I mean, if you really want to discover anything, you've got to be scientific about it. It just can't go pell-mell in there and it just doesn't work. Trust me, I've known archaeologists that were just as bad, so.
Oh, I know. Well, that's where I learned how to do that, was going to the archaeological field school. And, so you learn to be methodical and take your time and be very careful about what you're looking at. And I watch these people and I think, oh my God. So that was a valuable lesson when I was a young guy, not to talk about where I was going and what I was doing. But these people, they want attention so bad. And of course, I think that guy was tied up with Rick Dyer and some of them other hoaxers. So,
that guy came down here Dyer came down here to San Antonio when they heard about that episode with that one that they had, I don't know how many numerous phone calls from people that had picked up a roadkill deer and was dragging it across the road, and I don't know how many people were calling 911. They didn't know whether it was actually somebody dressed up in a Bigfoot costume, but whatever, dragging this across the road. But they come to find out that they had some homeless people that were camping out had set up a tent and had been camping for quite a while, evidently on a ranch that nobody, there's a lot of places out here, ranches and such, they're absentee owners, and that was what it was. And they were living there and weren't causing any problems or trouble, but they called 911 because this Bigfoot was harassing them. And it was a Bigfoot. It wasn't a human that was doing it. So, but that was about the same time that they had were having these reports where people were seeing this thing dragging that deer across the road. And the next thing we know, we got Dyer up here or down here,
it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate people like that are the first ones that race to a location where something really good could be obtained, in terms of evidence from a place like that.
Oh, yeah. And it's a shame that there aren't more anthropologists that take this seriously. I think there's more than there used to be that take Bigfoot seriously, but there's still not enough. And that aggravates me.
I was telling David, let's see if I can find it here. There was an article, and this was in regards to the 2 guys that died, the 2 Bigfoot hunters that died in southern Washington, in Skamania County.
Oh, yeah.
Over the holidays. Let's see if I can find that.
I hadn't heard about that. What happened there? Jeez, I'm just sitting down here in Texas being fat and dumb.
Well, these guys, what happened was they died of exposure. They shouldn't have been out there. So I'm trying to think. There was an article. I don't know where it's at right now, but
one was 50-something, the other was 30-something.
30,
and
yeah,
they 30. Looking for it.
Yeah, and I know Skamania County very well. I spent a dozen years working that area. That's the area that I was really focused on during that time period. Discovered their routines.
Well, how did they die of exposure? Weren't they prepared?
No.
Nope.
That's the bottom line. I mean, and that was the official report. They died of exposure. Now, I don't know what the thinking was, but I constantly pound this out there. I mean, there are probably people that don't listen to the show, but, number one, never go alone, and you have to be prepared. If you're from Western Washington, you learn how to be prepared for all kinds of weather. People, other Washingtonians will tell you, you better have, 4 seasons worth of clothing in the car for any one day because you might wear 2 or 3 of them.
Right.
I mean, the weather can change.
True, even down here in Texas, so, you know.
I mean, especially in the mountains up, south of Mount St. Helens, that area, which is where Skamania County is. Mm-hmm. It's, between Mount St. Helens and the Columbia River. Now there's a lot of roads there. And there's a lot of people out in that area now. So how these guys went out there, I mean, they had to have been really, really unprepared to die of exposure in that area. Well,
are we sure that's exactly how they died?
That's what they said, yeah. So the other part of that was there was an article by this a retired archaeologist from the University of Wyoming. And, of course, his mouth was, it's too bad, they died for something that didn't exist and, basically made a big farce of the whole thing, which I thought was pretty disrespectful for the 2 men that died, regardless.
Exactly.
And then, what's the saying, talking out of school or whatever, where, the guy's running his mouth about something he probably has no knowledge of.
Yep.
Giving an opinion. I could care less about somebody's opinion. I don't care how many letters you got after your name. I don't give a damn what your opinion is.
Well, and I hate to say this, but some of your best Bigfoot hunters don't have degrees. So.
Oh, that's true.
And one of the finest archaeologists I ever worked with, he didn't have a degree. Anybody can learn how to do something. Anybody can open a book and learn anything.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have to have somebody standing up in front of a room telling them. You can find out more information nowadays just by your own research than you ever could when I was going to school or even when you were going to school.
Oh, that's very true. I wish I could find that article. It was just interesting, the article. The guy, the thing.
Well, where exactly? How were they found? I mean, were they actually Bigfoot hunting at the time?
That's what they were supposedly doing. Let me see if I can.
But I remember the guy that we used to talk about, that that actor that they found.
Oh yeah.
And they said it was a bear kill.
Yeah.
And yet they knew that it wasn't. So that's what I was kind of wondering. Are we actually really sure that was how they died?
Well, so these guys, one was 37, one was 59, were located 3 days after being reported missing on Christmas Day. Says search crews facing freezing temperatures, snow, heavy rain, and rugged terrain despite the challenges. Let's see, they go in here. Let's see. Oh, the victim's vehicle was located near Willard, Washington, using footage from a newly installed law enforcement camera system. This led the search teams to the heavily wooded area where the bodies were ultimately discovered. They haven't released names or anything. That's basically what they said, but the other articles, they did say that they determined it was exposure.
Well, they were within walking distance of their vehicles?
Probably. Who knows? I mean, they don't give that much information.
No, they never do.
Investigate it.
Yeah, it says they appeared to have died from exposure, the sheriff's office said, based on weather conditions and ill preparedness. Now, that doesn't surprise me. If they went up there for, and a lot of people go out and they simply are not prepared for the outdoors. You know, even when we were up on the Flathead Reservation in October, even though it was nice and sunny during the day, we found patches where there was still
cold at night.
It was down the 20s, and we found patches. There were still big patches of snow up there from the previous winter. So, I mean, that area gets dang cold. So, you know, you can't just go in a place and think, oh, I'm going to be just Jim Dandy for a few hours. Well, what happens if your vehicle breaks down and you're 30 miles from the nearest, you know, town or anything?
Or if you get hurt on the trail.
And I know up there were a ton of cougars up there. I mean, lots of them. We did see one set of bear tracks, but, you know, the pinion pickers, they're up there till sunset. And when sunset, same with the woodcutters, when the sun starts going down, everybody packs up and leaves. So if you're up there dinking around after all them people leave, there's nobody there to bail you out if you get in trouble.
Yeah. You're just
well, I learned when we were living in Alaska, and Fred will tell you this too, you always we had a backpack for every person in the family, and it was always prepared with stuff that, you know, because up there you can die. You break down, you can die. You know?
I always make sure I got some way to make a fire. And, you know, those little magnesium bars are one of the best things to have because they can get wet. They can get wet or whatever. It doesn't matter if you got a knife, you scrape them, you can start a fire. Bring at least a jacket.
And tell people where you're going and where you'll be.
Tell people where you're going. We usually bring some food with us. We have water. You know, whether we use it or not, we bring it along. So, you know, in case anything happens, of course, a first aid kit, stuff like that. But, you know, you just have to be smart about it. You got to be prepared.
Well, and it's not unfeasible for people. I think that if you're planning on doing this on a regular basis, and that's something, you probably ought to look into.
Oh, yeah.
It's a satellite phone.
Yeah, we're talked about it. I mean, I know Adam and Don and I, all three of us had our cell phones, and there were times when there wasn't any cell reception up there. And I've mentioned that, of course, you know, he knew the area where we were at and everything. So, you know, we had a living map with us. So, but if you don't know really, if you're not that experienced in being out there, that's a measure you got to take. You got to have maps. If you can get a satellite phone, things like that. Listen, guys, I hate to say it, we are out of time.
That was a quick hour.
We were having so much fun.
Right?
I know. Well, interesting stuff for us. I mean, you know, as always, keep your eyes open there. Oh,
I do, honey. And Dave, you might not have known about this. I might have said something. I forget sometimes who I've said what to, but I had to kick Jessica out. Anyway, all that aside, so it's just me. So I am extremely careful.
Keep it and
every time I go out,
window, sweetheart.
Yeah, even when I go outside, I always have the dog with me. So,
good
and
plan.
I live in fear for my dog because now I'm not afraid of her for humans. She'll take them down in a heartbeat, but if they don't belong here, but I think that she would probably, if she saw one, she'd go after him, because I tell you what, she was doing some serious that was something I didn't bring up, but she was doing some serious smelling all around the barn door when I went down the next morning, and she was sniffing. In fact, she was how I found that one really good print at the corner of the paddock, and I actually went back down there. I didn't say this, I should have too, with my phone, because I was going to go take a picture, and of course my little blind mare, she had followed me around. She follows me, but she's blind in one eye, and she can see with one, and she had kind of followed me around back there, and she had walked around the paddock and obliterated the one good print that I saw. But, you know, it's like, I saw it, I know what it was, and it wasn't a human print. It was way too wide, first off, to be, you know, but, anyway, yeah, they're here.
And poured around the house.
Well, I can do that. I haven't had them since I put this fence up.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had them coming around the yard. It's a non-climb fence, and even for them, it's kind of hard. That only time that we had any incidents with one being here, and it was definitely a juvenile because it was not probably more than 4.5, 5 feet tall. That was the one that we saw on April 8th, the day of the eclipse. Remember that?
Yeah.
And it was three of us that saw that one, because it was not only myself but Jessica and then Angela, one of the gals that I work with at work. In fact, I had said something about the Bigfoot on my property, and somebody was laughing. Oh, yeah, y'all got Bigfoot on your property around here. And Angela, who's one of the managers there now, she came around the corner and she said, she's not lying. I was sitting right there too. I saw it. So you'd be calling me a liar too. And so we were like, okay, well, you shut up real quick.
All right, guys, listen, with that, we got to wrap here, guys. I'm running out of space here. Well, all I can say is join us next time, everybody.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out there.